it's just, we're thrilled to have you come to our 10th anniversary celebration. Being around for 10 years is no mean accomplishment, and we're very proud of it. So I'm Barbara, and I've spoken with a lot of you either by email or phone over the years. I'm Princeton Photo Workshops marketing manager. I'm not a photographer, but I'm the person who tries to make sure everything runs smoothly. So we've seen many of your faces as part of the Princeton community, Princeton Photo Workshop community over the years. And we're also seeing lots of new faces whom we really look forward to getting to know this year. So during the webinar, here's the plan. I'll be monitoring the chat box. So again, please keep your microphones muted and put all your questions and comments, and we welcome lots of those, into chat. I also want to say, after the webinar is over, if you have other comments and questions, just go to our website, click Contact Us, and we'll be answering you. So I think that's it to get started. I'm going to turn the virtual podium over to Alan, who's going to be our moderator today. And he's going to tell you how this is all going to work. So again, thank you for coming, and we're looking forward to a lot of fun today. Alan?
Thanks, Barbara. Hi, I'm Alan Kesselhout. Barbara and I launched Princeton Photo Workshop 10 years ago. So we think it's about time for us to celebrate. Over those 10 years, we've been lucky to work with some of the best photographer instructors out there. Today, each of them will tell you a little bit about how they approach their craft and what they strive to communicate to their students. But just a quick introduction. So first, Steve Brazel is coming to us from California.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to what 4:30 in the morning looks like for some people.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Freddie Clark is coming to us from New Jersey.
Hello, everybody. How you doing today?
Don Komarechka is coming to us from Bulgaria.
Здравейте. Welcome to the Black Sea, which I can almost see from my back door.
Oh, wow. Ossian Lindholm is coming to us from Salta, Argentina.
You're muted. You're muted.
Hello, everybody. Hola a todos.
Yeah, we visited Ossian in Argentina a few months ago. It was wonderful. Troy Miller is coming to us from California.
Hi, everyone. Good to see all the happy faces here today.
Rich Sherman is coming to us from Florida.
Morning, everyone.
And Josh Weiss is coming to us from New Jersey.
Hello, everyone. They make me follow Bulgaria and Argentina. It's like, New Jersey. Hello, everyone.
And Barbara and I are in Princeton, New Jersey. So that's the whole team. Thomas Hedges can't be with us today in person. He's skiing, but he will join us by video a little bit later. So we'll be playing that for you in a bit. So this is how it's going to work today. After hearing the thoughts from everyone, we're going to have a question or two for the panel, followed by Q&A. You'll put into chat, and Barbara will monitor that. But we hope today that you're going to leave with insights as to many different perspective photographers have, about their craft and how exploring different subjects can expand photographers' horizon. And photography, for me, and it should hopefully be for everyone, just a lot of fun as we go through it. And photography is a lifelong journey. And there's always new things to learn and new photography experience to explore. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I can attest to that fact. There's just new things all the time. But with all that said, just let me start, and then we'll introduce our speakers. I come to you with a degree in graphic Arts and Design from the University of Cincinnati many years ago. Barbara and I started Princeton Photo Workshop when, after I was teaching for a different photo workshop, we realized that we could do a better job offering well-run classes and expanding photography experiences. In organizing a great group of teachers that you'll meet today, we look for talent. We look for talented educators as much as great photographers. And I really do believe that we succeeded in that. I consider myself a travel and street photographer. Barbara and I have traveled the 6 continents. Maybe someday we'll get to the 7th. Not sure about that. Personally, I teach photo editing using Lightroom Classic, Photoshop for photographers, travel photography, and I do teach at our photo camp for teens. So with all that said, that's enough about me. So let's hear from our team. Steve, you're up.
All right, I'm up. First of all, to everybody, welcome. It is so nice to have everybody here. I'm in Southern California. Let me tell you, Alan, you want me to go through my bit now as far
Absolutely.
as? All right, perfect. So for those of you that I have not met before, and there are a few people that have been in my classes before, but for those that have not met me before, let me kind of give you a quick introduction to myself. Let me jump back here. First of all, my name is Steve Brazel. I'm a Southern California-based freelance live music photographer, really action photographer. I've been in radio for, oh my God, I'm going to date myself here, 43 years. I am, by trade, I'm an IT consultant, so I do network consulting, things like that. And I'm a podcaster. First of all, as far as the radio is concerned, here in Southern California, there is a radio station called 96.7 KCal FM, or KCal Rocks. It's a rock station. I've been there for 35 of my 43 years in radio. And this is actually where I do a lot of my photography for. We'll get into that in a minute, but the website is kcalfm.com if anybody is interested in checking it out. Along with shooting for KCal FM as a media person, I also do some what's known as house photography for concert venues. I do shooting for Live Nation. There is an arena here in Southern California called Toyota Arena, and I photograph a lot for Toyota Arena and various other arenas in and around the Southern California area. Podcast-wise, and Barbara brought up earlier the fact that I've done a lot with Dawn. Maybe that was in the green room, but Dawn and I have done a lot of podcasting together. My podcast is Behind the Shot. It's at behindtheshot.tv or Behind the Shot on YouTube for that matter. And that podcast, I get different photographers on. And on each individual show, we basically dissect a photo. There's a little interview portion as well. But the way I generally describe it is we try and get inside the mind of great photographers by taking a closer look behind one of their shots. For classes at Princeton, I have done classes on action photography. And the current class that's on the roster is an introduction to live music photography. It's my passion. It's the one type of photography that I will hopefully never give up in my life. It's, in my opinion, something that everybody should try at least once. When I teach this particular class, there's a number of areas that we go through. Specifically, we talk about how to get into concert photography. So concert photography is one of those weird genres where you can't just walk into a concert with your mirrorless or DSLR and start taking pictures. You might get a point and shoot in or your phone in, but getting pro gear into a concert is very challenging. There are gatekeepers that keep you out of that shows. And we're going to talk about how you might get into doing live music photography. Once we get past that, we're going to talk about preparing for a show, how you might research if you're shooting a country artist today, or a classical show, or a metal or rock show. Well, like for example, that's Judas Priest in the picture right there. We're going to talk about controlling the uncontrollable, the suggested camera settings. Everything in photography is a variable. Everything in photography is a trade. But we're going to kind of give you the starting point so that if you were to go to your first show and be shooting at a small club or an arena, where you might be able to start with before you start modifying your settings based on the show that you're at. Of course, there's always tips and tricks, right? My genre of photography, music photography, does have some unusual tips and tricks that will vary from those that are doing street photography, wedding photography like Troy, or landscape photography, or beverage photography like Freddie, macro or snowflake, something like that, like Dawn. Last but not least, and this is a big one, we do talk about etiquette. Again, unlike what Troy does, wedding photography, where he might be the only wedding photographer on site, although Uncle John always has a camera. In my photography, I might have 70 other photographers that have been approved for that show. And I'm not the only one that has all the rights. And so respecting the other photographers that are there and some of the etiquette that you might have to deal with. We're going to talk about image selection, and that is what makes a good live music shot work. And for that matter, we'll touch on some of the things that might make a live music photograph not work, like cutting somebody's head off. We're also going to talk about tips for editing. Live music photography is a little bit different. In most photography, you try and keep tact. You try not to blow out your highlights. You try not to blow out your shadows. But in live music photography, there's a lighting director pushing the extremes of the human eye. The camera can't even capture what the human eye does. So we're going to kind of focus a little bit on how you might get the most out of your photos once you're in front of the computer and editing them. And I just want to end with this for those of you that have never done live music photography. Live music photography is a little bit of everything. I call it low light action photography. It's event photography, in some ways similar to a wedding or something like that. It's portrait photography. Again, low light and action happening in front of you, and you're trying to document it. It's photojournalism in many ways as well. And our job as music photographers is to try and convey the story of that show to people that were there so that they look at it and think, I remember the show, or people who weren't there, and try and entice them to going to that tour or that show somewhere else. And it is absolutely, at least in my opinion, one of the most exciting, challenging types of photography that there is, and something that I think everybody should try at one point or another.
Oh, that was wonderful, Steve. Thanks a lot. Freddie, you're up next.
All right. Thanks, Alan. First, let me say hello to everyone, and what an honor it is for me to be here. One of the reasons why I got involved with Princeton Photo Workshop was when I saw the stable of photographers and instructors and how amazing they were. And they were people that I'd heard of before, and I knew coming in who they were. So it's a great honor to be included amongst this group today. I live in central New Jersey, not too far from New Brunswick. I was born and raised on Staten Island, New York. And usually the New York accent, especially after a couple beers or a couple whiskeys, does come out more prevalent, but it's usually always there. My path was a little circuitous to become a photographer. I started out in radio, like Steve. I worked at a couple of New Jersey radio stations, WDHA, WRAT. And when my daughter was on her way, when my wife was pregnant, it was really, I picked up a camera because I wanted to be able to document her life. And it was really that simple. And I got the camera and had no idea what it did, how it did whatever it did. It was just a box to me. So little by little, I spent the time to figure out, one step at a time. All right, what does shutter speed mean? What is aperture? What is ISO? And, through places like this and a lot of online things and a lot of books, especially books at the time, online was very, very young. I taught myself what a camera does, how it can do things. And my path has gone from, I shot some street photography. I was kind of just finding my way and finding what lit the fuse for me. Street photography, portraits. For a while, I shot weddings, and Troy, there should be a monument to every wedding photographer in the world, because it is probably the most challenging aspect of photography just because of the long hours and the interaction. So Troy. And one rainy day, I had nothing to do and nothing to shoot. And I was just kind of messing around, and I had some food around, and I just started putting food on a plate and messing around with that. My cousin owns a couple restaurants on Staten Island, and he was asking me one day, hey, could you come to the restaurant and shoot some food? And I didn't really know what I was doing, but it was family. So I'm like, sure, yeah, happy to do it. And when I was doing it, I fell in love with it. It was, I knew I had found my niche almost immediately because it just was, the time flew. A 6-hour day of shooting felt to me like it was just moments. So I just really dove into that aspect. And then finding, what can I shoot one day, when I had nothing to shoot, bottles around the house, a beer bottle, a whiskey bottle, and it was just like, wow, this is just, I'm loving this. I'm loving the control I have. I'm loving the interaction where I'm creating the scene myself. Everything was just on me. And it was just an entire opportunity for just me to be creative in a very limited, small space. And what can I do in that space? And what can I do with light? So that's really how my journey came through. Teaching wise, I've taught locally here for a couple places. I taught for Canon Live Learning, and then had the opportunity to meet Barbara and Alan, and and here we are today. My classes I teach really are broken up into two broad areas. I teach fundamentals and basics, and then I teach photo camp. And for the beginners, for the actual, first steps into photography, my biggest thing I try to drive, of course, we talk about the technical aspects. We do talk about, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, what they all mean, the exposure triangle. We go into all those things, yes. But the main thing I do try to get across is instilling in them people that passion for whatever you do, especially photography in this instance, but whatever you do in life, if you're not passionate about it, you're kind of wasting your time, I feel. So that passion, whatever you're passionate about photography. I know a friend of mine who likes to shoot dumpsters. And at first I'm like, why would you shoot dumpsters? And then he's like, when he talked about it though, he's like, oh, they're different shapes, they're different colors, some are new, some are old, there's textures. And it lit up a light bulb above my head, was like, you know what? He's passionate about that, and God bless him. So whatever you want to shoot, family members, grandchildren, children, your pets, flowers, it does not matter. I don't care what your subject is. As long as you're passionate about it, that's where the magic will happen. And I also teach beverage and food work. And in that case, it's really, I like to get across about learning how to control and use light. Light is all around us. And every picture, the main subject, I don't care what the topic is, but the main thing in that picture is going to be light. We can't do what we do as photographers without having light. So learning how to control light and make you be able to do what it do what you want to do. Sorry about that. Have the control, whether it's the sun, whether it's a studio flash, whether it's a flash, a little speed light. Learning how to control that light is paramount in food photography, beverage photography, still life, studio work. So that's kind of where, when we get to that level, that's where I like to really aim and really focus on, because it is so important. And the mood of a picture is totally determined by how you approach the light. Okay. So, yeah. So,
okay. Well, thanks.
That pretty much covers me.
Yeah, that was really informative. And yeah, shoot what you love. We try to explain that to our students all the time. Just photograph what you love, and then become a student of light. So with that said, Don, you're up.
Well, hello, everybody. Greetings from the coast of the Black Sea. We have a class coming up in February, extending into March, on macro photography. And I've done a number of classes with Princeton Photo Workshop, but I actually looked it up. The first time I got an email from Alan was December 1st of 2015. And the whole operation had been running for a while at that point, and international, I guess, instructors were being brought in, and I was being thought of in a very favorable light. And it was wonderful to connect then, as it has been pretty much every single year since then. And I've made a lot of friends here, and I see a lot of them here today. So thank you, everybody, and congratulations on 10 years of running this operation that has educated and inspired and offered creative input for so many people. So thank you guys for that. And I'm happy to be a gear in that machine as we move forward and try to just understand what creativity and photography is. And I'll share with you a couple of ideas that I've been working on over the past year. For example, I do a lot of water droplet refraction photography, and when you're experimenting with macro photography, this is a really easy setup to do. There is a flower in the background. It is a sunflower. Sunflowers, if you really just hammer the center of them with as much light as possible, the black kind of turns blue. And if you've got a narrow enough beam of light, then the petals around it don't completely overexpose, and you can get this really cool blue and yellow effect happening. Would you believe that this is a single frame out of camera with some special tricks, right? But it's not really focus stacking or anything highly technical in order to achieve this. Just the right puzzle pieces fitting together in the right way. But there's a lot of sort of mad scientist work that I like to do. For example, this image, I mean, it doesn't look like much right now. This is a sunflower that I had grown from seed. Particularly, this is I think an Italian white sunflower. Yes, there are white sunflowers. There's a few varieties. There's chocolate sunflowers too. But I knew from past experience that sunflowers fluoresce heavily under ultraviolet light. And I love to mix science with art. And so if I turn off my room lights and I hit this thing with an ultraviolet flashlight, and they can be easily found in a lot of different places, but you got to get the right ones to get the best results. Turn off the room lights, turn on the ultraviolet lights, and what you end up viewing at the end, with no additional special camera gear or filters or anything, is transformative. It becomes a different thing entirely. It becomes otherworldly, like you will see in Avatar 3, maybe. I'm not sure. But this is the kind of work that you can do right at home, at your desk, pretty much. I started doing a lot of this work on my kitchen table. And I don't know, it inspires me to know that the world is more than what we can perceive it to be with our own eyes, and just a little bit of elbow grease and creativity with that mad scientist mind. And I can take that further, and I do take it further in a lot of different ways. For example, this is citric acid crystals. Can you buy citric acid? You betcha. On Amazon, you can buy a couple of kilograms of it for almost nothing. My wife makes bath balls with them, and it's so whenever I need, I can mix it with water and then distribute it on a plate of glass. Microscope slide or an old picture frame is just fine. Let it dry off. And now you have this beautiful abstract crystal structure that you can colorize and photograph in any which way you can imagine. The ideas are really endless, all right from home. I actually, some of the experiments that I do turn out better than others. This one is actually 2 diamonds. There's no sense of scale. They could be the size of a softball, but they're the size of grains of sand. And you can buy little baggies of rough, uncut diamonds on eBay from the mines that dig them up in Pakistan and India and places for, I don't know, $15, $20. Now, the thing about most diamonds is that there's impurities in them, and the impurities cause them to fluoresce under ultraviolet light. And so diamonds commonly glow blue. Sometimes they'll glow orange and yellow and red and green. And we can, with a very small amount of additional equipment, start to explore this unknown world. Now, okay, photographing grains of sand that fill the frame, yeah, you might need a little bit more than your average set of gear. And so I always dive behind the scenes and show how the images come together. But the end result is usually pretty simple when you start dissecting the individual components. The most unusual element within this frame is a 10 times microscope objective, but there's a lot of 5 times macro lenses out there that could do the perfect job with just a little bit of cropping to get the same type of framing. So the gear is there, the technology is there, the ideas are what we bring to the table and start to, show how you go through that entire creative process. And one more image just to wind off the series here. This is done with a vintage triplet lens with some sequins in the background that happen to be blue and yellow. And so that created this wonderful bokeh in the background of this flower. And this entire series of images, by the way, I entered into the public domain in support of Ukraine, because Ukraine is about 215 miles away from here. And we're doing everything that we can to support them in their struggle. And that's what my last year has been all about. And the macro photography course coming up next month is going to have a lot of this and so much more. And I thank you guys for bringing me on to keep this wonderful, I guess, avenue of excitement and revelry here, because it's not work. This is fun. And I hope we're all having fun through it.
Well, thanks a lot, Don. Always wonderful to see you. And I want to thank you for all your work from Ukraine. That's where my ancestors come from. So I want to thank you for that. Ossian, you're next.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Alan and Barbara, to invite me. It was always a pleasure to teach for Princeton. And okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if you see it. Okay. I'm coming from Argentina. I'm showing this in this map where Argentina is and where my place where I live is, just in the northwest of Argentina in the Andes. I received the visit of Barbara and Alan some months ago. It was a beautiful trip. We enjoyed it a lot. Okay, since I entranced to photography since I was a kid, landscape was my favorite discipline, and I would say that in landscape, the light could be the main subject. Somebody said it before about light, how important light is, but in landscape is really, really, really very important. There's some landscapes from my country. And okay, one of the workshops I teach is one we call creative use of nature's light in landscape and cityscapes. Here, what I do in this course is trying to teach the exposing to the right techniques. See? Something that really helps you to make your natural light very creative. And although I use the landscape as a basis to teach the ATTR, the exposing to the right, it can be used also in cityscapes and of course in portraits. See, so exposing to the right techniques helps a lot to control your light and to expand the dynamic range of your camera. That is something very, very important. Also, I teach black and white. In landscapes and cityscapes. I really love black and white photography. I've been studied it a lot for the last, I would say, 6-7 years. I did a presential workshop in Princeton about this. Then the pandemic came, so the next courses have been always through internet. It's a very highly creative option, I recommend you to explore digital black and white. It's no relation with film black and white. Here, we work absolutely different because we start from a color image and we start working with the color, transforming them to different shades of gray. Not only landscapes, you can work wildlife or the wildlife in the landscape, like here, or this albatross from Galapagos, or this caiman in Pantanal in Brazil, and also, of course, cityscapes. This is in my province, a colonial building, and okay, it's coming soon a workshop on January 26, 32, and 9. So if you like it's a good opportunity to introduce you to the black and white photography. Another thing I love to teach, and it has some relation with the black and white, is the Ansel Adams sound system for digital photography. This is amazing because it's the sound system in digital shows remarkable relevance. Some people would say, no, digital does not need sound system, but it's amazing how the relevance is still have in photography. And more if you want to play with the black and white. It's coming now in February 1, a new Ansel Adams sound system. Another thing I do is photo tours. Since 1999, I'm doing photo tours. I started in Argentina, and then I went to other countries like Chile, Brazil. I did some workshops also in Galapagos and in Tanzania, in Africa, in Iceland. All that was before the pandemic. And what I'm doing now is Patagonia combining Chile and Argentina. I'm doing Northwest Argentina, Atacama in Chile, Pantanal in Brazil. So some of these destinations are landscape, and others are landscape and wildlife, and another's like Pantanal in Brazil is just wildlife. And I will want to show to mention wildlife. I'm not teaching anything about wildlife in Princeton, but wildlife is I'm really involved since I play with a documentary filmmaking on a TV show, and I get really involved in wildlife and in the preservation of environments. See, and this is a skin, American skin. Oh, I don't remember the name in English. Okay, but this is Pantanal, Brazil. This is Galapagos, and since I get involved in conservation, I'm a president of a non-profit organization called Bosques Protectores, and I really love to work on that, trying to help the environment. Okay, thank you very much. Gracias. It was a pleasure to share all this with you.
Well, thank you very much. The thing that Ossian didn't mention is that on the trip to Argentina, he is a wine expert. And excuse me, and we had so much fun I would say every evening, but it was also for lunch. We went to a lot of the vineyards, we tasted a lot of wine, so that was really wonderful. So
okay, yes, I missed that to explain that part, but you did it for me.
We thought that was great. Troy, you're up.
All right. I get to follow all these great photographers. That's comfortable. You guys, thank you for having me here and listening to all these presentations. Already I want to go to all of them, so I feel inspired, so that's good. And kudos to everybody that's here for showing up, because that's the very first thing that you have to do to learn anything. I'm a full-time portrait and wedding photographer, or a wedding photographer that does portraits sometimes. My wife and I have been doing weddings for 30 years full-time. That's pretty much all we do. She runs the business side. I kind of run the art creative side. I play with all the gear, and but we always shoot everything together. So that's been really fun for me. I thought instead of me just kind of like telling you more about me, I have a video that I want to show you. This is actually the video that we show our clients when they come and see us for the first time. So it's like a minute and a half, so it's super short, but I thought you guys would enjoy this. You can see me working a little bit and see some of the imagery. So here we go. Let me get that shared, and let me hit play. Good job. Good job. So turn to your left a little bit, and you're going to lean into me. You're doing awesome. I knew you would. Time for a fish eye. bus freaked me out. I guess it'd be too late by then, wouldn't it? All right, doing it right here. And up and just grab like the end of your hair right there. Just kind of hold it. Yep. There it is. You are a sexy man. You're doing awesome. I knew you would. So that's a little bit of what a wedding day looks like for me. It's crazy and it's insane and it's often hot and you don't get to eat, but you have to make things work, right? Like all of us in any of our crafts. So one of the things that I really like to focus on is, how do you get through the day? How do you create images with bad light? How do you deal with rough schedules? How do you create that image that your bride wants and make them feel comfortable without rushing them? I would like to say that my business is 80% photography and the rest of it is business, but it's not. It's the other way around. 80% of what we do is business, trying to stay afloat and run our business. So a big part of what any of my programs will be is we'll talk about business. How do you answer the phone? How do you price yourself? How do you sell? How do you talk to a bride? Unlike a lot of other professions, we're not only just photographers, but we're also, wedding consultants and we're therapists and we're makeup artists. And, I am really good at tying a corset dress faster than anybody I've ever seen, because that's what wedding photography is all about, right? It's a little bit of everything. So for me, having been in the industry for so long, I'm very passionate about education, very passionate about giving back. I've been honored to have interviewed Steve, Freddie, Don for several programs. I'm a regular on a podcast with Frederick Van Johnson from This Week in Photo. So I like to give back a lot to education and I love to answer questions. So for me, for my program and for myself, it's an honor to be here. And I hope you guys have lots of questions for us because we all have lots of information we want to share with you. So
I have a question for you, Troy.
yes.
How do you deal with Bridezilla?
You charge a lot and you interview a lot. To be very honest, we have a very stringent interview process that we go through with our brides. They may not always realize it, but we're interviewing them as well. So you hope to pick the best client that matches you. And then you never have a problem. To be honest, that's really what it is. Yeah. And that's it for me.
Yeah, and then you let your wife handle those problems, right, Troy?
You got it.
Let's get real about this.
Marjorie is the best. Marjorie is amazing.
I've learned that over the years. Oh, Barbara, listen, this is an issue. That was great. The video was great. And I shot one video one wedding back, I hate to say this, but back in the 60s. And that was the last one that I ever did. So I applaud you for that. Okay, now we're going to hear from Rich Sherman coming to us from Florida.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rich Sherman. I don't do weddings because when I take a bad picture of a landscape or a boat, it doesn't complain, nor does its mother. So I've been teaching with Princeton photo workshops for about 7 or 8 years, and I do a lot of seascapes and landscape work, some florals, a little bit of wildlife. I love shooting boats. I'm a former Navy officer. I love to sail, so I do a lot of boat images and a lot of sailing races. I didn't prepare any images. You can see my images at richardshermanphotography.com. But I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about Princeton photo workshops and what we do and how we do it. And it's so much passion in each of the presentations that have been made so far. I feel inspired, and hopefully you do as well. As I mentioned, I do a lot of boats and sailing. Each year I try to get to the Antigua Classic Yacht Regatta and a couple other regattas to shoot sailing images that occasionally appear, even though I don't pursue it, occasionally appear in magazines on an ad hoc basis. But so I've been teaching here for about 8 years. I love teaching. I do, like I said, a lot of landscape work. And certainly, as Ossian had said, light is paramount. I mean, it's just critical. Photography is writing with light. The challenge that I find myself dealing with and working with our clients on is space. To communicate emotion and feelings with wildlife or in landscapes, a really attentive use of space, how close objects are, how close, say, a bear is to another bear, how close a coyote is to its prey, how close different elements, different boats are together. Sometimes they make amazing images when they're stacked up at the start and it looks very chaotic and very dangerous. And other times you want to convey feelings of peace and tranquility with a lot of space around the sailboat and fog or beautiful light. So space is the thing that I'm really passionate about in my work, and trying to always figure out the appropriate use of space to convey emotions in my images and in the images of those who attend the workshops. I do teach a various number of classes. I think my favorite class is Mastering Color. And we pull in some really cool videos that are really very eye-opening about how we perceive color and how we can use it. And I think color applies just like light applies to pretty much every discipline of photography. Color applies to pretty much every discipline of photography, with the obvious exception being black and white. So I love this color class. I'm really passionate about teaching it. Obviously, I teach a landscape class as well, advanced composition. And last year we started out with starting a drone photography class. And, you know, drone photography is very consistent with this challenge of space, right? You really feel the elements of two-dimensionality in drone photography. And so the use of space and shadow and light is so important, because when you're at a shooting, for example, straight down, you don't have 3 dimensions. You don't have train tracks or fences that run parallel to each other to a convergent point. So it's really, really important to understand space in drone photography as well. I do some workshops as well. I'm a boatyard junkie, being a nautical and boat photographer. So we do a class each year down at the Jersey Shore, and we dig around a boatyard and the sail loft and see some rusty things, see some smooth things, see some wonderful color and some really interesting things. In the boatyard is just a great workshop. If you like horses, we do available light, which, you know, we say light is light, you know, so as opposed to being a professional, oftentimes you're out on holiday, maybe you take a trip to Patagonia, maybe you take a trip to Chile, but you really, you're only there for a week, so you can't really control what days you go out to shoot. So we do this available light class with the backdrop of an amazing horse farm right there outside of Princeton, New Jersey. Also do Boathouse Row, which is a lot about blue light and how do you trick night a little bit to get evening shots. So that works with cityscapes, not just with the Boathouse Row. And then over the holidays, we do the public library in Bryant Park, where they have their holiday markets. And that's a really challenging situation because of the very different light conditions from working in a dark library to going outside and having a bright skating rink in front of you. But it's super fun right before the holidays. I love to work one-on-one with the clients, even in a group setting. In all the workshops, we spend time one-on-one. We talk, so you can ask that question that you always wanted to ask but never did. So really passionate about that experience of working with you individually. And I have a great friend who says he gets up in the morning and he tries to teach something every day, and he tries to learn something every day. And I think in teaching with Princeton Photo Workshops, I think we would all agree as instructors, we learn something as well when we get to borrow your eyes and see the world through your lenses. Lastly, as Barbara mentioned, I'm leaving at about 11:30. I'm a Navy veteran, and I've been working on a project for the last 5 years to honor the men and women who died in the world wars and who are interred in the overseas American cemeteries. I think most folks know Normandy, which I've been to a number of times, but there's also 25 other American overseas cemeteries. And so later today, I'll be flying to Brussels and then going to the Netherlands, where there's one cemetery, Luxembourg, where General Patton is laid to rest, and then down to Rhône on the southern coast in Provence to shoot the cemeteries down there. And I'm hoping for a lot of snow to complete the picture that my book is trying to put together. I have a website for it if you're interested. It's www.neverhomeheroes.com. And if you want to sign up, you can sign up and follow it. But it's a project that's really added a lot to my life in understanding the stories and telling the stories through the language of photography of the men and women who were pulled into a horrific situation and did the best they could at a job no one wanted to do. And for me, that's the definition of a hero. So I'll try to keep it on time here. I'm going to hand it over to Josh or back to Alan, and I look forward to chatting with you guys in the Q&A session.
Yeah, just that I follow Rich's project. It's just beautiful. The
Thank you.
photography is beautiful. The thought behind it is beautiful.
Thank you.
So you really should check that out. He's a wonderful photographer. He's a wonderful teacher. So with all that said, Josh?
Hello, everyone. Some hard acts to follow there. You hear me, right? Okay, my screen's still showing Alan, so I wasn't sure. So yeah, I'm Josh Weiss, and unlike a lot of these guys, I am not coming at this from the eyes of a professional photographer. I went to school for film and video, so my background lies in the video part of this. But I am also a big hobbyist photographer. I started a YouTube channel several years ago, and it's called The Camera Project. And it started out with me and another video editor coworker. Just going back to my video work, I do a lot of video work. So I do video editing, and I do visual effects and motion graphics. So that kind of all plays into my work. So I wanted to have a reason to shoot video again, because I was doing more on the editing and the post-production side. And I wanted a way to basically practice my hobby of photography more. And that's where I started the Camera Project. So I started the Camera Project, and it started as a lot of camera reviews and things like that. But now I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, so I don't have the time to make as many reviews as I used to, but I still try to do it every few months and get a review in and get that side. Part of my job, I worked in New York City, and my commute every day involved walking from the Port Authority to my office. And that's when I kind of found my genre of street photography being what I was most into. So these are just some images from my website. And I love shooting street. I love the hunt of it all. And it gave me something to do on my commute, and it just made it more interesting. And so that sort of leads me into some of the actual photo field trips that I do with Princeton Photo Workshop. One of them is called the ABCs of the East Village. And here's just a few shots that come from actual workshop. These are all my shots. On the Princeton site, you'll see some shots from students as well. But these are all just from like the last couple of years of basically shooting. This is all from this past one this year. And so, yeah, it's, this particular day, for instance, we went out and we were so upset because it started to rain in the middle of the day. And then it turned into this absolute blessing, because after the rain let up, sorry, I went back too far, but after the rain let up, the ground was just started to steam, and there became this steaming coat of rising over all of the basketball courts and things in Tompkins Square Park, and it was just amazing. So my aesthetic is very much, you'll see a lot of black and white in my work. I like to sort of eliminate the distractions a lot, and I do like color as well, but I help sort of attendees focus on a lot of things. One is the technical. So I'm a very technical person. So I make room for anyone to come up and ask me questions and things like that, but also just on the sort of ethics of street photography. How do you approach someone and take their picture? Are you doing street portraiture, which we do as well, or are you doing candids? I usually tend to prefer candids myself. So I talk about techniques for doing that, ways to sort of not let the person know you're shooting. And if they do know you're shooting, give them a big smile, things like that, and tips to take them through that process. So these are all from the ABCs of the East Village course. And this is all mainly from the last year or two. And I also do another course, which I'll show in 1 second, which is the Highline and Hudson Yards course. And it's a similar vibe. So we'll walk through the Highline and we'll explore basically, all the people and the landscapes of the Highline. It's nice because it's a nice mix of street photography, architecture, even some landscape like you can see here, using reflections like you see here. It's all about the different opportunities that this one provides, because when you're on that part of the city, you sort of get the skyline aspect, and you get the New Jersey skyline, and you get the sky and stuff that you don't necessarily get when you have when you're in the middle of the city, like in the East Village. So here are a few sample images from those photo field trips as well. Going back to me and my career, I said I do video. Sorry, before I go there, I'll talk about I do run flash photography. We don't have one scheduled right now, but I'll do private lessons for flash photography instruction using speed lights and incorporating them. And this was in New York City, so it was sort of incorporating a sort of street and fashion type style with portraiture, and just sort of learning the basics of speed lights, so that you could go out and use them and do it in a way that doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be complicated, getting the flash off the camera and learning to understand the technical of flash, because it works in a very different way than ambient light. So, and how do you blend the two of them together as well? So I have a lot of different samples, including, even like composite type work like this. And as I said, I'm very technical, and I get into the whole post end of things as well. And also, I have a video production company, so I will teach editing in Premiere and things like that as well, or even the skills of video production. And I'm not going to show this video. I'll just kind of let it play in the background here. But this is a piece that I got to shoot in Jamaica. And I was listening to Rich talk about the drone photography, and I do that as well. I don't teach it, but I do enjoy it, and it's a whole different challenge. On this series, I was in Jamaica and I was flying a drone from a boat. So when you hit that return to home button, it's returning to where you started, and that was a scary moment. So I just thought I'd share that little anecdote of, if you're ever flying a drone from a boat, don't hit return to home. It's a bad idea. It was a very scary 10 minutes, let's put it that way. But anyway, I am so pleased to be in this company of instructors, and I look forward to answering any questions for you guys, and talking street and flash and all these other things. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Josh. That was, again, wonderful, wonderful. I'm now going to just share my screen, and we're going to play this video So I'm going to share my screen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Thomas Hedges, and I'm sorry that I can't be there with all of you right now. I wish I could join. I have, I think, a pretty good excuse that I'm skiing in Canada. I'm sorry if I'm making anybody jealous. Wish I could join, though. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've been an instructor with Princeton Photo Workshop for about 2-3 years, and grew up in Princeton and based in Brooklyn, New York. I specialize in portrait photography. So I do some field trips, but also specialize in the private classes and teaching people how to actually take a photograph of somebody. I have a background in news, so I worked in Washington, D.C. when after graduating college, actually doing print journalism, moved over into video journalism, and then eventually got interested in video and then photography. In addition to photography, I've done video projects that include pieces about obviously news, political pieces from the Hill in Washington, D.C. But then when I started freelancing, started to do more eccentric stories like pieces for CBS about drag queens in Baltimore and the drag queen community. I've done pieces about an all-black female rodeo team in rural Maryland, and then more recently, just a couple months ago, did a video piece for the UFC about an up-and-coming gym that's contracted a whole bunch of pro fighters for the UFC in Philadelphia. So I have the video, sort of the dual video and photo kind of background, which I think helps me kind of as an outsider. My approach is definitely to try and get to know the subject as well as possible that I'm photographing. So in our private classes with the portrait photography specifically, I teach you not only kind of the right settings to use and the right equipment to use, but also how to approach your subject. Having this kind of background in video and news, I have kind of had to learn how to approach people that come from a very different point of view, who have experienced a very different point of view than mine. And I think that has really helped me to become a pretty skilled portrait photographer. And I would say that that's what I try and impart, to my students as well, is we'll learn the settings as much as possible on the camera, of course, but that is sort of a means to an end. So I'm looking forward to continuing to doing private classes, but also maybe some field trips. I've done some field trips in New York, and then some group classes, portrait classes that we can all do together to kind of practice, how to use the camera, but also how to set aside and almost forget that we're holding a camera and be able to interact with the environment, with the scene, and with the subject in front of us. I'm looking forward to 2023 and to meeting new students. Thanks so much. Bye.
Okay, that's great. We have lots of questions. I think some of them are being answered now as we go through. But please don't hesitate to ask a question. But I'm now going to ask a question of our panel, and I'd like them to, just give us some thoughts and have them interact with each other. And here's the question that we're going to ask our panel. And we're going to start off, after I ask the question, we're going to start off with Steve, and we'll see how that works its way through. But students often ask us, as teachers, what it takes to be a really good photographer. What's the best photo advice you can give to a photographer to get them moving in a direction? And I have my personal thoughts, and I've been doing this, I hate to say this, but longer than a lot of our instructors have been alive. And I've narrowed down my photography to just a few little steps. And those of you who have taken my classes, I really tell you this all the time. And it all boils down to a few things. And I say this with tongue in cheek, but none of them have to do with your camera. And the first one is that every one of your photographs should have a definite subject. Now, if it doesn't have a definite subject, it's a snapshot, and that's all fine because I take more snapshots probably traveling than you'll ever see, than you'll ever do. So the first one is that every one of your photographs should have a definite subject so the people that you're showing your images to know exactly what you're trying to say. The next thing is that every one of your pictures should try to tell a story. Now, I'm not saying that this is easy. It just takes practice. So it's subject matter, try to tell a story. The next one is learn composition. So every one of your pictures should have good composition. Now, as a travel and street photographer, there are a lot of times where I will shoot wider, knowing full well that I can maybe get a better cropping and tell a better story or have a better subject when I get to the computer. So it's subject matter, try to tell a story, and learn composition. The next thing is, and a lot of our instructors have talked about this, become a student of light. Understand light, because that's all we're photographing. If we have no light, we have no picture. So become a student of light and practice that. See the light, see the light. Subject matter, try to tell a story, good composition, become a student of light. But I learned many years ago that learn how to process your images. Now, I do teach Lightroom Classic and I do teach Photoshop for photographers. And I was taught this many years ago by a very well-known guy. And it's even more important today that the more you know about software, the better decisions you can make when you're out there shooting to get a better image at the end. So it's subject matter, try to tell a story, good composition, learn light, learn how to process your image. But maybe one of the best things that I could ever tell you is to become a really good photographer is only show your very best image. No one wants to see 10 pictures of your fire hydrant. They only want to see your best one. You don't want to bore your audience. So that's the best advice that I could give any photographer. I'm not a gear freak. I've been doing this a long time, and these are the things that I do, especially when I'm traveling. So with all that said, Steve, you want to make some comments, please?
Yeah, sure. And I'm actually going to start by piggybacking off of what you said, and that is only show, your best work. The way I usually describe it to people is only show the work that displays you the way that you want to be seen. So if you go shoot 100 shots, don't do a 100-shot dump onto Instagram. Find your best work and only show the work that shows you as the photographer you want to be seen as. One of the questions that Alan asked was, what makes a great photographer? And I'm going to give kind of more the technical side here in just a second. But the first thing I'm going to say is it's a passion for shooting. We as photographers never stop learning, right? Something is always changing. New gear is coming out. Your subject matter changes. In my world of live music photography, the bands of today are not like the bands of yesteryear or my youth when I wasn't like this. And so it's important that you are always open to seeing the scene that's in front of you and trying to tell the story of that scene that's in front of you, to find your subject. Again, piggybacking off what Alan said when he touched on composition. I love, those people who say to me, learn the rules of composition and then forget them. But they tend to emphasize the second half of that. And I would emphasize the first half. Learn the rules of composition. Understand what in traditional media, film, paintings, from history, what we know from history draws the human eye into an image, the way that you layer. Rules of thirds work. On the other hand, once you know that, then be willing to break those and have your own photographic voice. Your voice is not mine. And if you and I were standing right next to each other, photographing the Foo Fighters or Luke Combs, there is no question that if we had the same camera, the same lens, and we're standing hip to hip, we would most likely get 2 different photographs. And that, to me, is the beauty of what makes a great photographer, is that you find your own photographic voice. My technical tip, there's a ton that I could go with, but I'm going to go with one that I think is sometimes thrown out, but I don't think it's really emphasized enough, and that is ignore the noise. And that means from a couple of different angles. Ignore the noise around you, the negative voices, the ambient things that are coming into your ears and affecting how you think about yourself, right? We all have imposter syndrome, for example. It happens. Ignore all of that. But from the technical side, ignore the noise. So today's cameras are all capable of making sellable images at extremely high ISO. So in my world, where I live at ISO 3200, 6400, I'm quite often at 12,800. Don't worry about it. Get the shot. A sharp shot that has noise in it is almost, there's exceptions, but it is almost always better than a completely clean shot free of noise that's blurry. So the main thing is, based on the subject and the story that you want to tell, you may want to blur something. If you're photographing a race car on a racetrack, you don't want to freeze the tires. You need to see some motion. Otherwise, it's, for all intent and purposes, the car's parked, even though it's doing 100 miles an hour if you freeze the wheels. So there are times that you're going to make those creative decisions to set your aperture, to set your shutter speed based on your subject. And then if you're in really low light and you have to get a higher shutter speed, raise the ISO. If when somebody sees your shot, the first thing out of their mouth is, wow, there's a lot of noise in that, then there's most likely something else wrong with your image. The most iconic images of our lives, the classic rock images, the classic images from the Vietnam War, the classic images of United States history, are filled with noise, and nobody ever notices it because the image is compelling. So ignore the noise, get the shot with your own photographic vision.
Great words of wisdom. Thanks, Steve. Freddie?
Yeah, I mean, kind of piggybacking off of what Steve was saying, but even taking it like a step back down, is spend time with your camera, right? If you were an athlete, if you were a musician, you get what you put into it, right? So I have a guitar 3 feet away from me. I'm a terrible guitar player because I don't spend enough time with it, right? I don't spend nearly the time I spend with my guitar that I do with my camera, right? So you can't be expected to pick up a camera cold once a month and expect great results, either creatively or even the muscle memory that you build up by just holding your camera and changing the settings, right? I tell my classes all the time, you should be able to pick up your camera and without looking, change your aperture, change your ISO, because when you don't have to think about those things, the creativity will just flow. And it's kind of, like warming up too. Sometimes, if I haven't shot for a while, it may take me a little while to get into that groove, to get into that flow. So spend time with your gear, just as if you were spend time with your instrument or your sport equipment. Spend time with it, and you'll be amazed at the results as you just become more comfortable and familiar with your camera.
Great words of wisdom. Don?
So 3 points. Number one, fail a lot. And that will redefine what failure means to you, because failure.
You're very quiet, Don.
Yeah, Don, your level dropped, Don.
Oh, can you hear me at all now?
There you go.
Am I good? All right.
Matt, you're
Sorry.
magic.
I have magic. But so the point is fail a lot. Because when you fail, you gain experience, and then you realize you didn't really fail. You just made a mistake, and it was a stepping stone towards whatever future success you're going to get. Be willing to make those mistakes. Be willing to ask the what if question. and see what the result is, because you don't know until you try, and you don't gain experience unless you try. And that image is not going to be one that you necessarily are going to hang on the wall or throw on social media. You probably shouldn't. But you need to go through that process. Like Alan was saying, don't publish 100 images of fire hydrants, but I've done snowflakes, and I've done 900 something of them now, and people are still not upset with that. So maybe that's the exception to the rule. But the concept is only sharing your best work, but that means you have to create a lot of really bad work and then slightly mediocre work, and slowly build yourself up to be at the level that you envision yourself to be. And so that's a challenge. But you also have to instill certain limitations upon yourself. And I've heard of photographers, street photographers, that say, okay, well, I'm only going to shoot with a 35mm lens today. And you go around the whole day, just that lens, and you have a unique perspective that is created by that field of view. And I have a lot of that too. You think, okay, well, what could a limitation be? I have some very old digital cameras. How do the AI enlarging algorithms behave with that? I actually have a project going on right now where, believe it or not, I have in my hands here a Game Boy camera. And this is a 140 pixel square black and white camera. And how can I make art with this in the modern day? And will I make anything useful? Probably not. But I'm still going to do it. And will that become a series that I share? I might share an image or two of it, but I'll be tinkering away in the background for days or weeks on this thought process, this concept, this idea, this what if question. And I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. And if nothing comes of it, all right, I move on to the next one. But if something does, you've just done something that very few people have done. And the more unique your work can be, the more valuable it's going to be on the world stage. But you'll also feel better about just creating something new. And that's my advice. Create something new.
Yep, all good. Ossian?
Well, okay, very interesting words of everybody. I would say, to add all these words, is to say enjoy. Photography is to enjoy. See, and always try to find a new motivation to go out and shooting. Try to find a project, and if you want to do something serious, study, participate in workshops, in classes. And I want to tell you what happened to me some years ago. I was in a moment that I found that I lost all my motivation with photography, and I start to think about what to do to recreate that motivation I lost, and that's when I found the black and white, the digital black and white, and in that moment it's like I enter in another world that motivate me to go out and take pictures again, because black and white is so creative. And when you're a landscape photographer, a nature photographer, you're always seeking for the golden light, for the blue light, for the extremely interesting light. But suddenly with black and white, you are independent of that. And it has helped me a lot. So I would say, try to find always a motivation, a new project, and most of all, enjoy photography.
And enjoy the wine.
Oh, yes, of course. In that order. First the wine and then photography.
Absolutely. Troy?
Such good advice. For me, I see two paths to this. I see the creative side and I see the business side. So I'll speak to the creative side. It's already been said, but I think there's so much information here that you can get. You can always ask the good question, but the thing is like, what are your questions? What do you want to ask? And I think that's the hardest thing for any of us learning. I've got a guitar sitting over here, just like what Freddie said. I'm horrible at it, and I've taken lessons for 8 years.
And I
but
can
I don't
testify
know what
to that, by the
questions
way.
to ask.
I can testify to that. I can testify to your guitar.
So what my suggestion is chase your vision. Chase what you love, and then through that process, you'll know what questions to ask. You'll know what gear you need. It'll help you learn to pre-visualize things, right? So if you want to get into street photography and you start doing it with your phone and you realize, oh my gosh, like my phone's not enough, I need XYZ gear, right? So start with your creative vision, and then let the gear and the instruction and all that other creative stuff follow. You don't need to go learn Photoshop and learn every piece that's in there and how to do composites if composites aren't your vision, right? So do that. And then also keep in mind, we live in a world of social media and things like that. And social media is not a metric for good photography. Everything that we see on social media is everybody else's best possible work. And that's not fair for you to compare yourself to. It's also not as also everything like I would sell. My best work, I might not put on social media, but my brides love it. So there's a different metric there, and use it appropriately for what your goal is, right? So I always feel bad when somebody comes and shows me a portfolio and they're like, oh, all this work is terrible and I'm not happy with what I'm doing. And I'm like, well, show me stuff you like. And then they go online and, it'd be like a beginner food photographer going and look at Freddie Clark stuff and be like, yeah, but that guy spent his whole life doing that. Like, you're where you are. So you use those metrics appropriately. And then there's the business side of it for anybody that wants to make a little bit of money or, take a career into it or whatever it is. My biggest advice for that is just answer the phone. You'd be surprised at how many people in business don't answer emails, don't answer the phone. They're lazy, they're sloppy, they don't show up on time. I mean, I don't know how they expect business to work. And I know that seems kind of silly and maybe a little bit trite in the beginning, but really just show up. One of my favorite pieces of advice that was given to me by somebody who did a workshop that I advised, and he came out and did this big portrait workshop, and he basically said, look, just don't suck. You can sell work. You can be a good guy, be a good person, treat people well. Just as long as your photography doesn't suck, you can sell it and you can make a living. Set realistic expectations for yourself. And then, of course, lean into this community. Not only the instructors, but also the students. Everybody has questions and everybody has something to learn. I've been doing this for over 30 years and I'm still learning stuff. Steve takes me to a concert and it just kills me because it's not what I wanted it to be, right? Like, so, follow your vision and do have fun. Definitely have fun.
Okay.
Hey, if I could just pop in on something Troy just said.
Excuse me one sec. Excuse me, Freddie, 1 second. I'm sorry. Rich is going to have to leave. So hold your thought. We're going to go to Rich for a moment because I know he has to leave and catch a plane.
Thanks, Alan. Hello, everyone. Just my basic answer would be do a mentorship. I mean, you have some really impressive people here at Princeton Photo Workshops. Sign up, do 5-6 lessons over the course of, say, 3 months. I don't know. It can be very customized, but kind of a few years into doing this professionally, I did a mentorship because I needed to find some creativity, find another gear, right? And that was invaluable to me. So take your classes, learn from your classes. If you have a favorite instructor, do a mentorship, sign up, do 5 or 6. That's one-on-one, that's custom, that's feedback on what worked, what didn't work. That's feedback on spacing, that's feedback on light, that's feedback on composition, that's feedback on crazy stuff you want to try, but we're too scared to try it. And you put it in a mentorship, in a online with your mentor, and you discuss it. To me, that's the most, if you really want to get good at this, work one-on-one with somebody, do a mentorship, do 5-6 sessions over the course of 3 months, and your life will be changed. Is it cheap? Probably not. I don't know. It wasn't cheap for me to do it, but if you talk about value, you're just going to find a whole new world, a whole new gear. And if there's something you're really passionate about, music, macro, street, you got guys here that can take you to the next level. Back to you, Alan.
Thanks. Travel safe. Hope everything goes well on your trip. Freddie, I'm sorry.
No worries. So with Troy's comment about, the portfolio and looking at your work and thinking it sucks, I don't think that's a bad thing, right? I always look at my work from a few years ago and think and find things that I could do better. There's always room to grow. There's always room to improve. And sometimes, Steve mentioned the imposter syndrome. We all go through that. And I'm sure we all look at our work at some point and go, oh man, I just missed it and I got to get better. That's a good thing. So having the doubt in your work sometimes can drive you to get better. There's no being there. There's no arriving. Right? It's a growing process. When you look at your work and go, I've arrived, this is perfect, I'm never going to get better. That's when you stop. That's when you're not growing anymore and you start dying. So never look at your portfolio as I've arrived. There's always room for improvement. That's it. That's what I had.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Josh?
Yeah. So again, I'm coming at it from a slightly different perspective, from the perspective of a hobbyist. And I've heard so many great things that the other guys have said, and I will touch on. But I think most importantly is something that Ossian said, which is enjoy it. Why are you doing it if you're not enjoying it? Find what it is. For me, I use it to sort of unwind and de-stress and spark creativity and feel like I created something original. So I think you find what it is that sparks your creativity and what that genre might be, what that technique might be, what that favorite subject might be. I love the hunt of street photography, like finding subjects on the street, because you're constantly looking and constantly you only have a moment to react. And I love that sort of thinking on your feet element of it. And that's what brings me joy. And I love the feeling you get when you finally nail one and you're like, oh man, like you may not even remember taking that shot because you just did it so quickly. And then you go and look at your pictures and you're like, oh, I hit that one right on the head. And I love that feeling of just feeling like I got it. Now to Freddie's point, you never be happy with yesterday's result. Always look to get better. But at the same point, sometimes you got a good one, and I love that feeling. Alan talked about light, and that's also something that's really interesting for me, because working in visual effects and video, I'm kind of constantly analyzing light. I had a little aside. I had a client, a national beverage I worked on the visual effects for a few months ago, and they said, "Oh, we're changing one of the flavors. We need to replace the can," but the can is sort of spinning in slow motion. It was real shot footage, shot on set, and they were like, "What can you do?" So I had to go through the process of modeling this whole thing in 3D and recreating that exact lighting. So analyzing light is something that I've been putting a lot of attention into lately, and just making things feel real and right. But getting that right light in street photography or any other genre is so important to the final frame. And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on that someone, Kurt, asked in the chat, and Kurt has been to some of my workshops before. He feels like he lost his photography mojo during the pandemic. And if we have time, maybe we could all touch on this. I'll leave that up to you, Alan. But looking for advice to get it back. And I think, like Freddie said earlier, I believe it's just getting out there and doing it every day. Like I said, I used to do it on my commute. So my camera would be in hand twice a day, every day as I walk to the bus. And now that I work from home, I really miss that. And I feel the same way, Kurt. I'm not out there shooting as much as I once was because of that. But I think it's getting out and doing it and finding what it is that you enjoyed in the first place. And then maybe finding new things to enjoy I saw Ocean suggesting things in the chat of, different genres you might want to try. So yeah, I'll leave it up to Alan if we have time to address any of that question, but just wanted to touch on it, Kurt, because I know you came out shooting a few months ago with me. So
yeah, no, I think that's all a good point. But to go back to what Rich Sherman is doing is, a personal project, if you can develop a personal project like he has done, you can see how passionate he is about that personal project, and that will just lead you to other things.
Can we, Alan, do you want us, other people to chime in here, or do you want to get
Absolutely.
through the panel first?
No, we're through the panel. Yes, I would like you to chime in.
So, Kurt, a couple of things. The personal project is such a great idea, but you mentioned also in your question in the chat that you have moved to some black and white photography, and that has kind of reinvigorated it. That's a great start, because now you're stripping it down to the basics. You're stripping away the distraction of color, and you're getting to the shapes and feel and mood of that image. That's a good place. But one thing I would suggest doing is limit yourself a little bit. Either put on one lens that's not a zoom and force yourself to shoot with that, whatever you're shooting. And then instead of a personal project, pick a weird project. Go to a parking lot and challenge yourself in nothing but a parking lot with a 51.8 or whatever lens you want, right? Go to an empty parking lot, or I guess it could have cars, and challenge yourself to make 10 images. Something you've never shot before. Just walk into the parking lot and challenge yourself to find 10 images in the space that's in front of you. And it doesn't matter if those 10 images come out as portfolio shots that you want to print 3x5 and hang on the wall, right? That's not the point. The point is just to get you seeing in a new way that you can then take into the genre that you shoot.
Great,
And
thanks,
just
thanks. Steve. Does
just
anybody
or
else want to
pick another
comment?
pick another genre, Kurt, for a little while. Do something different. Shoot something different that you normally would not shoot, right? I'm a big believer in you can learn from different genres of photography and bring it back to what your favorite genre is, right? So go, learn something about wedding photography or portraiture if that's something you haven't done before. If you've done street, do something different. Just different things in and bring in different things, watch different things, look at painting, look at some documentaries about artists, just bring new stuff in, and that will help to churn up the creative juices in you and get you inspired again.
And let me add one thing on what Freddie just said. Exactly that. Find something. Like, I learned, strangely, as a music photographer, I learned more from Troy, his wedding photography, how he sees light, or from a landscape photographer and how they layer, that I bring to my music photography. So if you've never shot music, find a small club with a little band, take your gear in, and try and get yourself some music shots. You will be frustrated as heck. That's great, right? That's where that spark, that's where that creativity is going to come from, is that challenge in your mind. That's the main thing. Challenge yourself.
This is what I do
If I can
too.
add.
I mean, you got to challenge yourself, but also, I mean, I find go to your happy place, wherever that happens to be. In Canada, there was a number of waterfalls that I would love to just go walk around and enjoy without a camera. But with a camera, I had a lot of fun there. But go there and do something different with it. Shoot it in infrared. Shoot it in stereoscopic 3D, which is easier to do than you might imagine. Heck, shoot it with a darn Game Boy camera, because I'm going to be doing that. But you just do things differently in the same environment that you already know you enjoy, but spin it around. Do something different and find a new way to enjoy what you already know you love.
Troy,
And
any
we have to
words of
ask
wisdom?
ourselves.
Or I think it's time for us to start to wrap this up.
Yeah, but Barbara, Troy had something to say first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think first of all, I just want to let Kurt know that this is completely normal, right? Like, this is what we all struggle with. I mean, I've been doing this 30 years, and like every 5 years or so, I go through this lull where I hate all my work, and my wife's like, no, it's great. The brides love it. And I'm like, no, it sucks. I hate shooting by that tree. We always shoot by that tree, so this is something that we all struggle with. So you got to ask yourself, do we struggle with the fact that we don't like what we're shooting, but we're shooting a lot? Or do we struggle with the motivation to go shoot? So those are two very different things, right? Like the idea that, if I don't have motivation, all the recommendations that everybody had is valid, but how do I get myself out of my seat and go do that? And what I do is I completely deprive myself of photography. I don't look at social media. I don't do any of the normal things. I just walk away from it. Kind of like if you have too much of a good thing, right? Then I just sort of reintroduce myself back into it, right? And maybe it's on my walks. I'll take my camera with me, and I'm like, oh, look at that leaf in the gutter. Like, damn, I'm back. Like I'm excited again. But I had to have that deprivation for a time. Everybody has their own way to do it. So, just throw yourself at the wall, see what sticks. But it's very normal. Every 5 years for me, it's like a cycle. So
Yeah, I agree with that. Barbara?
Yeah. Okay. We do have to wrap up. This has been great. I think, we have a wonderful group of instructors, and as several of them said, try new things, try things that you never thought, oh, I need to try that or know that, and you'll be really surprised at what you learn, because everything overlaps everything. So it's really been delightful to have all of you here today. For those of you who are new to Princeton Photo Workshop, we look forward to really getting to know you this year. And those old timers, we look forward to seeing you again. You'll be seeing a review form in your inbox shortly, which includes a great discount on your next class. So make sure to open it. And if you want to get in touch with us, follow up with anybody with any of this, just click. The easiest thing to do is to click Contact Us on Princeton Photo Workshop's website, and we'll be back to you. So we're looking forward to seeing all of you at classes this year. And just remember, we're all here to help you become the great photographer you want to be and to explore new things. And have a great weekend. Thank you to everybody.
Cheers, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah,
Bye,
everybody
everyone.
stay safe.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
one.
everyone.